Okay, this is the review on scientific notation. So we are going to work with some big numbers and small numbers, so we should review how to write and solve and use a calculator with scientific notation. So multiply by tens is just moving the decimal over that many zeros. So if you have 1 0, you're going to move it over to the right one spot. So 23.456 turns into 234.56. If you multiply by 100, you move it over 2 spots because there's 2 zeros. And multiply by 1,000, you move it over 3 spots to the right, and you get a bigger number. And you multiply by 1,000,000, 6 zeros, you move over 6 spots to the right. Dividing by tens is just moving it over to the left. So 1 0, you move it over to the left 1 spot. 2 zeros, you move it over to the left 2 spots. And 3 zeros, move over 3 spots. And again, if it's 6 zeros, it would be 6 spots to the left. Now notice when you move over to the left and there's no more numbers, you gotta add zeros as placeholders to move the decimal over. So scientific notation is just a shorthand way of writing a very large or very small number in the power of 10. So back in 2011, population reached 6 billion people. So that is 6 times 10 to the 9 people. Now 7 times 10 to the 9 people. 7 is the coefficient. 10 is the base, which all scientific notation is base 10. And 9 is the exponent with people as the unit. The number of molecules in 18 milliliters of water is 602 sextillion water molecules. That's a lot of water molecules. That is that many zeros. Okay. Now we don't want to write that big number, so we use scientific notation. So you have to make the number between 1 and 10, so more than 1, less than 10. So you move over the decimal that many times. You count. It's 23 spaces. It's usually good to go by threes because that's where the decimals are. So how do you write that in scientific notation? You basically have to multiply that 23 times to get the decimal back to its original location. So it's 6.02 times 10 to the 23 molecules. Now remember, scientific notation has to be between 1 less than 10, so 6 is less than 10 but greater than 1. And it took us 23 times to move that decimal over to get to 6.02. Mass of a carbon atom, very, very small. Okay, so we don't want to write that small number. We want to use scientific notation. So the decimal point is there on the far left, and it took us 23 times to move it between 2 and 0. Now because it has to be between 1 and 10, so the number is 2.01. If you moved over to the right more, you would get 20, which is greater than 10. If you moved it to the left, it would be 0.2, which is less than 1, so you can't be that. So the number would be 2.01 times 10 to the negative 23 grams. Negative because you are moving it to the right. So if a number is less than 1 in scientific notation, it's going to have a negative exponent. If it's more than 1, it's going to have a positive exponent. So how would you put 6 centimeters in scientific notation? Sounds stupid, but you need to understand that any number that has an exponent of 0 is 1. So you can always put that in your calculator and be like, hey, 10 to the 0 power is 1. So That means you move the decimal over 0 times, which makes sense because you're not moving the decimal, because 6 centimeters is 6 times 10 to the 0 power. Alright, this is where students usually make a mistake in making sure they don't know what calculators are for and how to use them. So, by placing scientific notation on your calculator, there's multiple ways to do it. Depends on your calculator. There's an exponent button on some, EXP. On your awesome iPhone, there's also an EE button, but that has to be on landscape. And on a training scientific instrument, there's also an EE button, but you have to make sure you hit second and then press the function of that comma. So second EE. So how do you do this? 6.3 times 10 to 34 kilometers times 5.6 times 10 to 16 kilometers. So you make sure your calculator is clear. Type the coefficient 6.3. Push your EE or exponent key. If you have to do the second function, that's fine. Hit second EE. 34, because the exponent is 34. Hit the multiplication sign. Hit 5.6, the coefficient. Again, then hit EE or XP, and you hit the 16 exponent. Notice we didn't hit any tens number because that EE button is your times 10 function. Press equal sign, and that's it. So try it with a negative exponent. We have 5.2 times 10 to the negative 12 times 5.6 times 10 to the negative 9. Clear your calculator, type the coefficient, 5.2, hit your EE button. Now with the exponent, it's negative 12, so you hit 12 and then plus or minus negative, or plus or minus key. Some people have to do the negative first and then 12, or you hit 12 and then the plus or minus key. Hit your multiplication sign, 5.6, EE, then use your exponent for 9 and make sure it's negative. Then you hit equals. Alright, if you have any questions, we're going to do some practice on the notes. So that's going to be on OneNote. You're filling the information, and